All right, this is Mrs. Slauson, and this is the Chapter 7 review. For this review, I'm going to be doing a good amount of the problems, but I will not be doing all of the problems because I want you guys to try to get some of your own practice as we go through there. But you'll definitely see a variety as we go through. So for the graphing, I'm going to be covering problems 1 and 3. And whether I do problem 1 or 3, you need to remember the points that you're going to be using for graphing. So in this, I will be using -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And the first thing I just want to know is what are the transformations? So the 3 is going to make it stretch. The 1 is going to make it go right 1, and the 4 is going to make it go up 4. So from there, what we had said is that we're going to use the flip, stretch, or compress when we make our t-chart, our graph. So I'll be leaving out the -1 and the +4. So when I make my graph and my table, I'll be using 3 over x. I'll apply the 3 in there. So putting x in, the -2, the -1, and the 0, I'll be getting -1.5, -3, 0 doesn't work, and then I'll be getting 3 and 1.5. So before I graph those, what I'm going to do is go ahead and graph the walls. So the walls are going to be moving right 1 and up 4. So my first wall, I'll have it go right 1. And for later purposes, they don't ask this later, but I do want to know what the asymptotes are. That will help. So where x is 1. And then my other wall is going to be moving up 4. And that wall is at y equals 4. By putting those on my paper, it's going to help when we go for domain, range, and behavior, and things like that. So if you graph these first, you can actually think of these as the new x and y axis. And then from that center, from right here, that point, which is not going to be a point on the graph, I can go left 2 and down 1.5 and just kind of estimate that, and then left 1 and down 3, and I'm going to have my first curve. And then I'll do the same. I'll go over 1, up 3, and I'll go over 2 and up 1.5, and then I'll have that curve. Oops, that didn't quite hit that point. So now what I'm going to fill in are the points that we would put for the arrows. So what I would suggest you do is you start with just the infinity. So on the left, x is getting smaller, and I'll have to figure out the y. And on the right, x is getting bigger, and I'll have to figure out the y. And then for the up and down arrows, I don't know the x yet, but y is going up, so that's infinity. And on the down arrow, I'll get the x in just a moment, but y will be -infinity. So the reason why I had you fill in the asymptotes over here is because now whatever coordinate it is that you are missing, you can just fill in there. So when I look on the left and right, I need the y values, so I'm going to fill in 4 because the wall of 4 is going to stop the y's from moving up or down. And then when I look at the up and down arrows, the x wall is going to stop the shape from moving left or right, so they're going to have a 1 in there. All right, so as far as the domain goes, domain is smallest x to biggest x. There's 2 shapes, so I'll have 2 domains. So the one on the left is -infinity to 1, and the one on the right is then 1 to infinity. And then, remember, that's domain, and range is y. So when I look at the shape on the left, the smallest y, I'm going to go from -infinity to 4. And then on the other shape, I'll pick back up at 4 after the wall and go to infinity. And here I'm only asking about the end behavior as x is going to infinity, which is right here. X is going to infinity, and so g of x, which is what this function is called, is going to 4. And then is g of x decreasing or increasing? As I go left to right, the shape is decreasing. It doesn't want me to specify necessarily. I'm not sure if they want that or not, but it's decreasing. The y's are decreasing left to right, and when I give my answer, I'll use the x values. So it's decreasing at x starting at -4 to 1, then we hit the wall, and then it's decreasing back at 1 to infinity. All right, we're going to talk about number 3. So on number 3, again, just what are the transformations that are going on? So first of all, that 2 is going to make it stretch 2.